And to some other stories we're following for you now. Pennsylvania Senate nominee John Fetterman is responding to concerns about his health less than a month now before the midterm elections.
That's right. The state's lieutenant governor conducted his first in-person, on-camera interview for NBC News after having a stroke 5 months ago.
Exactly that they're saying. I use captioning.
Fetterman uses a closed captioning device to help him process the reporter's spoken questions in real time. Republican challenger Dr. Mehmet Oz has called on Fetterman to disclose more about his health. But Fetterman has asserted he and his team, quote, have been very transparent in a lot of different ways.
Our doctor has already given a letter saying that I'm able to serve and to be running.
I mean, respectfully, that letter from your physician, that was 6 months ago. Don't voters deserve to know your status now?
Being in front of thousands and thousands of people and having interviews and getting around all across Pennsylvania, that gives everybody and the voters decide, if they think that it's really the issue.
Fetterman's campaign released a statement after Tuesday's interview saying the Senate candidate is healthy, but he, quote, still has a lingering auditory processing issue, end quote, that doctors do expect to go away. Joining us now is Julia Manchester. She's a national political reporter for The Hill. Great to have you, Julia. To what extent do you expect Dr. Mehmet Oz and his team to use his rival's health against him? Because it was only just a few weeks ago when Fetterman seemed to have the momentum, where Dr. Oz was making all sorts of gaffes at the grocery store. And now the Oz team seem to really want to make this an issue for voters. What's your take?
Yeah, I think the Oz team is coming at this from saying this is an issue of transparency. They say that the Fetterman team hasn't been as transparent and that they've been sort of, accusing them of covering up parts of his health and not being transparent about that. However, we do see that the Fetterman team has been providing updates, and obviously that interview showed that he uses a closed captioning system. So you're seeing those attacks coming from Oz and Republicans. But what I'm really watching out for is when these two go head to head in 2 weeks at a debate in Harrisburg. We know that Fetterman will be using a closed captioning system, but I think that'll definitely be some sort of a test, I think, for both candidates. How Mehmet Oz is able to sort of navigate this issue with his opponent having suffered a stroke and going through this. And of course, John Fetterman trying to, show that he is willing and able to serve and healthy enough to serve.
Well, Julia, what do you think will be enough to satisfy them in terms of releasing health records, or what does he need to show leading up to the midterms that might satisfy the other side? Or do you think it's just purely political right now?
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to satisfy the other side. This is purely political. And I think the Oz team and Republicans view this as, sort of a hole in Fetterman's strategy. They, are saying, look, he's hiding behind this digital strategy, these digital attacks we've seen from the Fetterman campaign going back since the summer. However, John Fetterman has been doing events in person. He might not be doing a ton of on-camera interviews. Obviously, he did one last night, but he is doing in-person campaigning, and that has certainly been an uptick from over the summer. And I think you're also going to see Fetterman's allies point to the fact that there have been other senators who have suffered strokes, and they have served in the Senate after they have suffered a stroke. So, I think this is something that's not going to satisfy the Oz team. They're going to use this as a potential weakness against Fetterman. So we'll have to see how that plays.
And they, as you mentioned, they've got this debate scheduled in just about 2 weeks from now, and viewers will get to kind of make their own decisions. But what are the top issues for voters right now? Because each of these candidates have been kind of picking on each other personally, right? Fetterman calling Oz out of touch, Oz calling Fetterman a slob because of the way he dresses. But what really matters to voters?
Yeah, there have been a number of personal attacks, but we've also seen both of the candidates hone in on their own issues. So, for example, Fetterman has really zeroed in on this issue of a potential national abortion ban if Republicans were to regain control of the Senate, very much trying to tie Mehmet Oz to that. Speaking to a lot of voters in suburban Philadelphia, for example, trying to get those suburban women voters to hear that message. Whereas Mehmet Oz is talking quite a bit about crime crime in areas like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, using that to galvanize the base and maybe sway some of those same suburban swing voters. I think the economy is also obviously going to be a top issue with inflation. But I think inflation, crime, maybe the situation at the southern border to a certain extent. We've seen other Republican Senate candidates who aren't in border states talk about it. However, I think right now it seems like in this race, the candidates are talking about abortion, the economy, inflation, and crime.
All right, Julia Manchester helping us take a look at this interesting race in Pennsylvania with less than a month to go before the midterms. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.